Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at the NL playoff structure. Who should the Phils most want to face? Who should the Phils least want to face? We pick our path on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic, doing sports talk radio here in Philadelphia for over 5 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 4 seasons, and this is now my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure that you're rating and reviewing if you're checking us out in podcast form. You can get us wherever you get your podcasts, and you can also watch the show on YouTube if you're doing that. Like and hit that subscribe button for the Locked On Phillies YouTube channel, please. It's free and easy to do that, right? Like subscribing, it takes a second and it doesn't cost you anything, but it will get you notifications when new episodes are posted so you're up to date on all your Phillies news, and it really helps us out as well. So thank you to everyone who's done that and everyone who's going to do that. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. You can enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for 2 to any golf tournament in the USA. Visit 5HEWin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. So go ahead and check that out. So in today's episode, we're going to start off with looking at the National League playoff teams and a playoff hopeful or two, and discussing who would be the best matchups for the Phillies. I know it's very early, but it's never too early to take a look at how the Phils could maybe make this run happen. And then I have an idea based on an article I read in The Athletic that I'll tell you about, where we're going to discuss some undervalued Philadelphia Phillies from this season. And finally, we'll round out with a preview of the Phils matchup with the Nationals. Second time in as many weekends that the Phils will be playing the Nats. That series starts tonight from Citizens Bank Park, so we'll talk about that in the final segment. But let's start with this conversation about who should the Phillies want to face. That's right. We're picking our playoff opponents. Now, I know what you might say, Connor, this is bad luck, bad karma. And it is. You're right. Okay, so I'm not doing this right before the postseason saying, hey, we've got a week to go. I hope this team loses a game so that we play that team. I'm more just looking at the postseason opponents and giving you my evaluation of whether or not I think the Phillies are a good matchup against them. There are some teams that are really good in the National League that I think maybe the Phillies would match up with well. There's some teams that are just barely sneaking in that I think the Phillies would not match up well against. So let's run through it. In case you are wondering how the standings sit in the National League, even though we went through it yesterday, I'll just remind you the Phils are leading the NL East by 7 games. The Brewers are leading the NL Central by 7 games. And the Dodgers are leading the NL West, but that's only a slim 1-game margin over the San Diego Padres. The Cubs in second in the Central, and the Mets in second in the East. Now, the way this works is obviously the top 3 division winners, well, the 3 division winners are in the postseason. Then there are 3 at-large teams, and right now it's the Cubs leading in the top wild card spot, the Padres in the second wild card spot, the Mets in the third wild card spot, and the Cincinnati Reds, who will also be included in this exercise, just a half game behind the Mets. The Mets lost to the Nationals last night. That's how the Phillies' lead in the division went up to 7. So of those teams, the Reds, Mets, Padres, Cubs, Dodgers, and Brewers, who should the Phillies most want to face? And this could change, right? A lot of stuff happens over the final month of the season where teams get cold, teams lose players, things happen where teams don't look quite as formidable as they do in this moment right now. So this is not a Bible for how to say, okay, this is what needs to happen. But in this moment, I just want to give you an idea, because we are at the point in the season with just about a month to go where you say, okay, it's time to turn our eyes towards October. So first and foremost, the number one team that I do not want the Phillies to face the least excited I would be to see them play any team is still and has always been the Los Angeles Dodgers. Absolutely not. That is not a team I want to run into in October. That's it, right? None of this is cowardice, by the way. I'm not saying, well, the Phils could never beat the Dodgers. The Dodgers, prior to last season winning the World Series, have lost to lesser teams in the postseason in choking fashion. So it's not the Phillies could never beat the Dodgers. No, that's not what I'm saying. Did you see the series that the Phillies just had against the Seattle Mariners? They could beat any team at any given time. There's no baseball team on the planet that the Phillies could not beat. The question is, will they beat them? And I think if you were to play series against all of these teams, the least likely winning outcome would be the Los Angeles Dodgers because they have the best roster in baseball. They have the postseason experience. They have a veteran manager. They have everything that you could want to be a dangerous postseason team. I don't care that they haven't had a stellar regular season the way that a lot of people thought when we were back there in March and April. They're still going to be in the postseason, and they're still, to me, the most dangerous team outside of the Philadelphia Phillies. So, Dodgers, no thank you. The number 2 team that I do not want the Phillies to face might surprise you, but I have a perfect example as to why it makes sense. The number 2 team that I do not want the Philadelphia Phillies to play in the postseason, you guys are going to hate me for this, it's the New York Mets. That's the number 2 team that I do not want the Phillies to play, right behind the Dodgers. I don't want the Mets. And it's not because I think the Mets are a better baseball team than the Phillies. The way they've been playing recently, you cannot make that argument. The Mets have completely plummeted while the Phillies have steadily rose. So it's not, I don't know if they match up well with their lineup. It's not, I don't know if they can hit their pitching. But we saw this in 2022 and 2023 with the Atlanta Braves. They didn't want to believe it either. I will not fall for the same trap I've seen other people fall for, all right? Fool me once, shame you. Fool me, can't get fooled again, I believe, was the old line by George Bush. But no, you're not going to fool me twice on this one, all right? What's going to happen is the Mets are going to see, we're playing the Phillies, and the immediate reaction in that fan base's mind, those players' minds is, we've done this before. We've been here before. And the mind is an incredibly powerful thing. Playing against a team that firmly believes and has concrete evidence that they can knock you off is not good. The Brewers don't have that. The Cubs don't have that. The Padres don't have that. The Reds don't have that. No, but the Mets have that. And they also have division familiarity. I don't want them. So they're number 2. All right. The number 3 team that I would not want to see the Phillies play is the Milwaukee Brewers. They have to be in there in the top 3 because they've just played incredible baseball lately. Now, my pushback on the Brewers being the most dangerous team in the National League is simple, right? Because they do everything well. Good pitching, good bullpen, good hitting, a little bit of pop, a little bit of average, run production, they handle it. They're a darn good baseball team. It's why they are where they are with the best record in baseball. But if you look around baseball right now, right, and over the past, 2 weeks, month, whatever, you point to a team and you say, I don't think that team's going to play as well in October. The Brewers are the only team I could 100% guarantee you. They will not play as well in October as they have played over the last month. Guarantee it beyond a shadow of a doubt because there's no way. They just haven't been losing. They're going to lose games at some point. And teams that peak early like that are teams that I look at as potential early outs in October. This is not just me taking a shot at other National League teams because I think they're a darn good baseball team. But just I've seen it before. I've watched a lot of playoff baseball. And teams that peak like this in late August or early September, and the Phils have been those teams before, they normally get a little bit of the reverse in the coming weeks, and that could lead to an early exit in postseason baseball. So the Brewers are number 3. They're not up with the Mets because they don't have that mentality. They're not up with the Dodgers because the Dodgers still have the best roster in baseball, but they're number 3 in the National League. Number 4, to me, is going to be the San Diego Padres. They scare me more than the Cubs, but they don't scare me a lot. The Padres are a team that, to me, They just don't have that winning vibe. When you look at the players on their team, they're nasty. Their bullpen, incredible, especially with the acquisition of Mason Miller. Like, that's going to be a really tough team to beat on paper. And yet, doesn't it feel like the Padres just, they don't have a winner's vibe? Machado, Tatis, I don't know what it is, but something about that team just never really says to me, National League champs, World Series champs. All due respect to the Padres, because again, I think they're a very talented team. This is just one podcaster's gut feeling, but that's why they're number 4, because I would not be too concerned about the Phillies matching up with them. I think it would be a tough series, but the Phillies also have taken down a similar to this roster back in the 2022 NLCS. So that leaves 2 other teams, and they're both in the National League Central. The Cubs are number 5 because the Chicago Cubs, the Phillies have handled them this year, and they don't have the pitching. They didn't add to it at the deadline. So the Cubs can mash, but so can the Phillies. And the Cubs don't have the pitching to get enough guys in this Phillies lineup out. I think they're a really good story this year, and they had a hot start to the year, but the Cubs just didn't do enough at the deadline for me to look at them as a team that I'm significantly worried about in October. And finally, it's the Cincinnati Reds as the 6th team to face. And that is why it is very important that we watch what the Reds do and what the Mets do. The Mets play the Braves for 3 games this weekend. The Phillies obviously will play the Nationals for 3 games this weekend. We'll preview that series, Phil's Nats, coming up later. But if the Reds can sneak in over the Mets are my number 2 most feared team. The Reds are number 6, so the final spot of any potential playoff team, and they're only a half game away from each other. So let's go, Reds. Need you to take care of business, slide into the final slot, and maybe make some magic happen. Could you imagine if it was like Phil's play the Reds in the second round after a bye, and then the Brewers in the NLCS and just take care of business that way? How good would that feel? Yeah, it's a path that could work. So just, you're way too early. Playoff preview of teams I would want the Phillies to face. Let me know in the comments if I've gotten anything terribly wrong, or if you think that this is bad karma for going through it the way that I just did. But that's my evaluation. It is subject to change as the regular season continues into the final month. Coming up next, I got an idea from an article in The Athletic about undervalued Phillies. I'll tell you what the article was, who wrote it, and why we need to focus on a couple of guys that we still haven't really focused on. We'll talk about that as we continue today's episode. Let's talk about 5-Hour Energy, because it's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. The grape, ginger, and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies or making great memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Whether you're out on the course or maybe you just need a little extra push to power you through your day, 5-Hour Energy Transfusion delivers that clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. And there's a lot of great times to take this. It's not just when you're out on the golf course and you're playing and maybe the group in front of you is slow and you're tired and you lose that energy and you say, okay, well, we've just hit the turn, playing 9 more, bang. Oh, I feel great. I feel like I'm jumping on the first tee box again, energy-wise, because we know no one plays well on the first hole. But it's great for that. It helps you out because golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. The grape ginger lime flavor of 5-Hour Energy Transfusion gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without leaving the course or chasing down the bev cart. And now you can amp up the fun even more. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for 2 to any golf tournament in the USA. Tee up that trip and visit 5, spelled out, FIVE, -HE-win. So 5HEwin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. That's 5HEwin.com for your chance to win a trip to any golf tournament in the United States. So I was reading through The Athletic, as I always do. They put out great stuff. If you are not a subscriber to The Athletic, first subscribe to Locked On Phillies, then you should check out The Athletic as well. But they have great stuff. And there's this great article that I clicked on that got me thinking by Jim Bowden. And Jim does a great job writing stuff about baseball in general, right? Like Major League Baseball in general. He doesn't just focus on the Phillies like Matt Gelb does or Lachlan March does. But Jim Bowden put together an article about the most undervalued, underappreciated players on each of the major league teams. And guys, or I think it might just be the playoff teams. Either way, obviously the Phillies are included in this list. And the name that he brought up was not the name that I thought. I thought he was going to go like maybe, Christopher Sanchez, because he's still one of the most underrated players in baseball or something like that. Or Bryce Harper, because even though Kyle Schwarber is putting together an MVP caliber season, Bryce Harper is still such a big part of things and maybe people have forgotten. But no, he makes a great pick. He says that the Phillies' most undervalued player is Tanner Banks. And that's a great point. Here's what Bowden writes. Banks has been the most underrated arm in the Phillies bullpen, logging a 2.98 ERA and .94 whip over 54 appearances. The southpaw has shut down lefty hitters who are batting 163 against him. That's 13 for 80. He goes on for more on Tanner Banks, but he's absolutely right. Tanner Banks has been one of the saviors of the Philadelphia Phillies bullpen this year. Now, he's going to lose a little bit of his shine because just as he continues to do his job well, Jose Alvarado comes back. And Jhoan Duran gets acquired at the trade deadline. And David Robertson gets signed. And all of a sudden, Banks went from fourth most important pitcher in the Phillies bullpen to sixth most important pitcher in the Phillies bullpen, right? So it's kind of a thankless job to be that seventh inning reliever all year long and then wait for the deadline for somebody to come in and take your job. Not that Banks seems to be upset about it or anything. He knows his role on this team. But Tanner Banks was a guy that I was just like, I guess he can throw against lefties a little bit. I thought he stunk at points last year when he was on the team. And this year, he has been awesome for them. He is this year's Jose Ruiz. And I didn't think we would see one develop. But right before my eyes and yours, we've seen Tanner Banks turn in not an all-star season, right? He's not a closer and not going to be. But he has just been solid after solid after solid. And he is going to be a valuable option against lefties in the sixth or seventh inning of postseason games. I've told you the bullpen structure already. I'll just run through it one more time now. Duran obviously gets the ninth inning. The eighth inning is reserved for Matt Strahm or Ryan Kerkering. Nobody else, not never. Well, unless you're up like 7 runs. Then you can throw whoever. Right? But the eighth inning, depending on where you're at in the lineup, is Strahm and Kerkering. Then in the seventh inning, it's between Tanner Banks and David Robertson. Remember, Jose Alvarado cannot pitch in the postseason this year. He is ineligible due to his PED suspension. So that seems to be the easiest bullpen structure for those 6 guys. And maybe add a starter in there, depending on what happens with the rotation. But I want to think about some of the other undervalued Phillies this year that we have not given enough love to. Now, the tough thing is there haven't been like a lot of guys up and down with this team, so outside of the bullpen, that is. So when you look at the guys on the field, like the hitters, I should say, non-pitchers, you're not really seeing any undervalued guys. You know who's good, you know who's not, right? Schwarber, Harper, Turner, Realmuto, turning in great years. Realmuto has very much turned it around. I do want to say half of Rafael Marchand is very undervalued for the Philadelphia Phillies. He has not hit the ball well at all this year. But there is something nice about being able to go to a backup catcher who can still very much control the running game and has handled the rotation pretty darn well this year. I'm not going to commend his bat because it has not been commendable, but half of Rafael Marchand's game is very undervalued. He's a really good defensive catcher. And that's something that you hopefully don't have to see in October. But if you do get in a situation like that, where, knock on wood, something were to happen, like he can at least hold down the running game, and the rest of the guys can potentially make up for him in the lineup. I think another guy that has been majorly underrated for the Philadelphia Phillies is Weston Wilson. And this is not, understand what I'm saying here. This is not me saying Weston Wilson is a true Major League Baseball player. He's on this team. You should not ever send him down. He deserves to be here. No. But Weston Wilson has come up in some big spots for the Philadelphia Phillies. And by come up, I don't mean to the plate. I mean being called up from the minors. He was a guy that was going to make the team out of camp, right? And then his season has turned into an up and down kind of seesaw of AAA to majors to AAA to majors. And that's a tough thing to do sometimes, to be called up and sent down that many times. And right now, he's not really playing a bunch at the major league level, but you've seen him since he was most recently called up start to get hot. Like, I think he can have a stretch of 2 weeks or so where he does look like a really darn good major league hitter. And then he'll cool off. And that's why he's more of a AAA guy overall. But you need those guys that can get called up and get hot for a week or two. And also that are just great locker room guys that do not complain about getting sent down, getting called up, the playing time, the role on the team. They know their job is to just be ready whenever. And he deserves credit for that, for holding the Phillies up at some point and coming up big in other spots where some of the outfielders have really not come up big in, right? Like Max Kepler's had some solid moments recently, but when he was struggling, hey, Weston Wilson had some moments that helped this team stay afloat, right? So those are a couple of guys that we never really talk about on this podcast. And I know that they're sitting in the locker room on their phones or maybe on their laptops watching or listening to the latest episode of Locked On Phillies and just adding another tally to the wall of days that Connor hasn't talked about me. If you're Weston Wilson, Tanner Banks, Rafael Marchand's defense. So there you go. For the unheralded Phillies, throwing you a bone today because of that article by Jim Bowden in The Athletic, where he focused on some undervalued players for postseason hopeful teams. It takes more than just 26, right? It takes minor leagues. It takes call-ups in the bullpen, acquisitions, front office folks to put together a good season. It's not just the stars. Now, in the postseason, it very well could be. And we're about to see if the Phillies can get closer to that postseason with what they do against the Nationals over the weekend. It's a rematch of what we saw last weekend, and the hope is it goes a little differently. But we're going to look at what the Nationals have been doing lately. They may be exactly what I thought they were. We'll talk about it as we wrap up today's episode. Do you remember? Not the 21st night of September. No, we'll get to that in about a month, actually. What is today? Is today actually the 21st? It's the 22nd. Darn it. All right. Anyway, got caught up with a little earth, wind, and fire there. My bad, folks. But do you remember the start of the season when I looked at the division and I said that for the Philadelphia Phillies, I think the difference in winning and losing the division is going to be how you play against the Washington Nationals? Yeah. I thought, no, this was wrong here. I got to tell you when I get them wrong. I thought that the Braves are going to be very good. They have not been. They're dead and gone. I thought the Mets were going to be very good. And I thought the Phillies were going to be very good. Hey, as Meatloaf once said, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. But with those teams up at the top of the division, I didn't think they would be pushovers. I thought the Marlins were going to be like, terrible, pretty much. And they've turned out to be middle of the pack. But the team that I looked at was Washington. And I said, okay, well, Washington's one of those weird teams where they could either be a middle of the road team, they could be a bad team, but they have a little bit of talent building there. And they have some young players that can make them dangerous. They're 52-75, 23 games below 500. So obviously it has not worked out for them. But I said that the Phillies would play the Nationals and how they did against them would be a big determinant to make up or lose ground in the NL East. Because I felt like you're going to see a situation where there would be games where the Nationals steal from some better teams in the division, like the Mets, for example. And if the Phillies could handle their business against a lesser opponent, they would be just fine. And they would probably win this division. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the Nationals-Mets series that just occurred. The Mets go out and they win game 1, 8-1. Great win for the New York Mets. But then the Nationals win 5-4 Wednesday, and they won 9-3 yesterday. The Mets end up dropping a series to the Nationals. Now, this is not Mets stink. No, because the Phillies just split a 4-game series with the Nationals last weekend. So clearly the theory was correct that how you make up those games against the Nationals could play into this division. But because the Mets just dropped 2-3, they gave the Phillies another chance to get this thing right. Now, the Phillies are the better team, clearly, and they should match up well with the Washington Nationals. So we'll see if they can pick up even more ground in the division. The Braves are facing the Mets this weekend. So that's a series where we're all Atlanted up. Let's go. Need them to take a game or two off the New York Mets and give the Phillies an opportunity to add to their division lead with a series win over the Nationals. So that's just kind of a look at where we're at. But I'm starting to feel better and better about what I said about the Nationals and how they could affect the winner of this division. They've done a good job of kind of being a thorn in the Mets side. Now protect your sides because they could be a thorn in ours as well. 3 games with the Nats starting today at Citizens Bank Park, a 6:45 p.m. first pitch. And it will be, I believe, yes, that is correct, the last time the Phillies played this Nationals team this year. Nationals aren't making the playoffs, so it will be our final matchup between these two opponents. And you got to take advantage, right? There are not that many series that the Phillies have left where it's just pushover series. Remember, Brewers, the Marlins have been playing better baseball, Mets, Royals, Dodgers, Diamondbacks, Marlins. I guess the Twins stink. But that's your September slate. You got some tough teams that you're going to have to play, and you don't really get an easy finish. So take advantage here. 3 games, you should win 2 out of 3, right? So that's something that you want to keep an eye on over the weekend and keep in mind. Now, the Phillies go to the mound with Taijuan Walker tonight. And Walker is another one of those unheralded Phillies. The only reason he was not mentioned in our last segment is because we've talked about him a bunch because starting pitchers get a lot of shine, right? And he's been really darn solid. I wouldn't say great, but he's been solid for the Phillies and for what we expected. Grade him on a curve. That's great. Now, Cade Cavalli is on the mound for the Nationals, and he was dominant against the Phillies down in Washington last Saturday. I know because I sat out there in right field at Nationals Park and watched him dice up the Philadelphia Phillies. So, can they solve the Cade Cavalli question? Righty, he's only thrown 16 1/3 innings this year. He did give up some runs in his last start, other than what he did against the Phillies. So, yeah, you've seen him. It is possible for him to be hit around, but I don't love the matchup only because the Phillies didn't seem to ever figure him out. Now, maybe you've got some familiarity, right? And maybe instead of a 4 o'clock game down in Washington where maybe the shadows were an issue, you get a 6:45 p.m. night game here in Philly. So the Phils are actually heavy favorites on the money line, minus 190, and 59.6% chance to win this game, according to ESPN Analytics. And I think part of that is the hot offense. So who's going to stay hot for the Philadelphia Phillies? Well, we'll talk about my home run predictions and everything like that. I think Walker will give you a solid 5 innings tonight. Maybe give up 2 or 3, and that's okay. You can survive that because the offense is going to have to carry the day tonight against the Nationals. They can't get shut down by Cavalli again. But I do just want to look at the other pitching matchups in this series just to let you know who's throwing when. Tomorrow, Aaron Nola back to the mound. He will be facing off against Mitchell Parker. So we get another Nola and Nationals start to see if he can look any better than he did. I'll tell you right now, I won't feel great about that game until I see the result. And Ranger Suarez goes to the mound against Jake Irvin on Sunday. So the Phillies should, in theory, have the advantage in at least 2 out of the 3 pitching matchups, if not 3 out of 3. But we'll take a look and we'll see how it plays out. I know you're all waiting for it. I've predicted the correct home run hitter or a correct home run hitter for the last 2 Phillies games, and I nailed the Jesus Luzardo strikeout prediction. So what am I thinking is going to happen in tonight's game? Well, you've got a righty on the mound, so I'm going to look at the lefties. And I have a feeling, just a feeling, Bryce Harper's going to go yard tonight. He loves hitting against that Nationals team, whether it's at Nationals Park or at home in Philadelphia. And Harper's been sneaky hot lately. You missed it maybe a little bit because of the 20 hits in 2 different games against the Mariners, and Kyle Schwarber's doing what he's doing. But as I was talking about with that sarcastic Bryce Harper pick for undervalued Philly, he really is a guy that you kind of forget about when you look at this team as being an all-world baseball player because Kyle Schwarber's having an insane year. So I think Harper goes yard tonight off Cavalli. I think the Philadelphia Phillies win this game put up 6 or 7 runs again, hold the Nationals to 3 or 4. Maybe we see the big boy. Hopefully it's a safe outing for him. And hopefully the Phils can add some more ground on the magic number. The magic number's down to 29, I think, to wrap up the NL East title for the second straight year. So once that gets like below 25, we're going to start taking a deeper dive into that and mentioning it daily. But take care of what's in front of you. Beat the Nats tonight. And we will be talking tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies. But thank you so much for joining us. Once again, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that really helps us out. I appreciate that. And make sure you're checking out Mark Farzetta on the Locked On Phillies postcast. It's right here on the same YouTube feed, the same podcast feed, but it's immediate reaction to every game. So he'll be on tonight as soon as Phil's Nats wrap up. Check that out and check us out tomorrow when we're back with another episode of Locked On Phillies.